Bambi, I don't know if you want to talk about your beginnings, but Angelique Style had asked how you got started in weddings, and did you assist someone, or did you just go for it right out of the gate?
I did assist someone. I've known since I was a little child. I've always wanted to be a photographer. I've always wanted to be a photographer. I've loved pictures. When I was a little kid, if my parents wanted to keep me out of trouble, and I was always in trouble, always. I've always been that kid who was just people shook their heads at. And but when they found that when I'd go to visit their family friends, that if they sat me down on the couch and gave me their wedding albums, I could be content for hours looking at pictures. I've always loved them. And to this day, as soon as I walk into someone's home, the first thing I do is I go and I look at all the pictures on their walls. If they have wedding albums laying out, I'm looking at their pictures, their albums and such, because I love pictures of people. I think it just tells us so much about them, and I just think that photographs are very special to me. I got married in 1975, married my high school sweetheart, and had a friend with a good camera take my wedding pictures, as many of us have done. And they were terrible, and I will never forget how I felt when I sat down on my couch and looked at my pictures for the first time. I'll never forget it. And as important as those pictures were then, let me tell you, and I'm not trying to back up the hearse, but when your parents are deceased, your grandparents are deceased, your sister is deceased, and many of the people that you have loved and known throughout your life are no longer around, that's when pictures become treasures to you, because that's what we have left of those people. And so I think that it's really important for us to document, those wonderful people that come in and out of our lives, and that I think family pictures especially are extremely important, not to us as much as they are to our children and the generations that come after us. And the cool thing that we have the ability to do today that they didn't have 100 years ago, when we look at pictures of our great-grandparents from 100 years ago, we could tell by looking at them very few things. We could tell what they wore. We could tell maybe whether they were rich or poor, but we could tell nothing about their personalities. You see, today, we have the wonderful privilege of not only documenting what a person wore on their wedding day, and the fact that they had a wedding cake and that they danced at their reception. We have the opportunity and the privilege of being able to document who they were and all of the wonderful nuances that made them those quirky people that they were. Like grandpa that's just dancing with a lampshade on his head out in the middle of the dance floor, or father that is break dancing, and spinning like a top on the dance floor at his son's wedding. I mean, there's all these crazy things that happen at weddings that, because we are where we are in the scheme of time, we have that wonderful privilege of going farther in documenting the human spirit, not just the shell of that person. So that's how I kind of got started. I did apprentice under a local photographer, and let me tell you a little bit about that experience, because it really is who I am today. When I moved to California in 1982, I started off as an executive secretary. That was before spell check, and anybody that knows me knows that I can't spell worth a darn. But I'm not stupid. I just wasn't interested in that. And I worked for this company in San Francisco for a year, and my boss loved me because I'd go get him coffee. I was from the South, I was from Georgia, and I'd come in the morning and go, "Baby, would you like to use some coffee?" And he would go, "Oh, I love that girl, it's awesome," because I'd go do all the stuff that none of the other women in the office would do. But that only lasted about a year, and then he really figured he needed me to learn how to type, so that didn't last long. But thankfully, by that time, I had a girlfriend who worked for a photographer, and she said, "Bambi, I know you have a good camera, and you like to take pictures. My photographer that I'm working for is looking for someone to photograph weddings. Why don't you go talk to him?" So this was truly a fundamental moment in my life. I have pivotal moments in my life when my life changed because of the actions that I took. Absolutely, they changed. I'll never forget it. It was Don Gerhardt. He was a photographer in Walnut Creek, California, and he had an upstairs studio. And he had pictures on the wall as you walked upstairs. So I had my little terrible portfolio underneath my arm, and as I walked up the stairs to his studio, I promise to God, this is exactly what happened. I put my hand on the doorknob of his studio space to walk in, and I was so terrified that he would turn me down. I took my hand off the doorknob and I ran down the stairs and out the building. And I went down the block. I was so afraid that he was going to say no. And then my next steps are why I'm here. Because I turned around, I sucked it up, and I just said, "Hey, you know what, Bam, the worst thing he can say is no thank you." So what? I'm not going to get cancer for that. Just suck it up, swallow your pride, and just move forward. And that is what I've done my entire life, is I just take and focus on where I could possibly go, and I do not get hung up on what could have been and what didn't happen, because if you don't ever try, you are never going to get anywhere. You can be assured, if I did not walk through that door, I would not be a photographer today. And who would I be blaming for that? Well, I didn't pursue that. What's my excuse? I got afraid, and we all get afraid at times. So I literally walked through that door, I sucked it up, I ran up the steps, and I walked through the door, and I said, "Hi, I'm Bambi Cantrell. I'm here to talk to you about coming to work for you." He hired me right on the spot, but how could he not? I told him I'd do it for free. I did. I worked for him for a year without pay. But I'm telling you, that was the best year of my life. And that's why my motto is humility over ability. Because if that man told me to go park the car for him, I parked his car. If he wanted me to jump, I said, "How high do you want me to go?" Because I really wanted to learn. And I'm one of those people, I couldn't learn it from a book. I couldn't do it. And I just could not go from plan A to, I couldn't do that. So I needed to see it. And I carried his equipment to every single wedding that he did for a year. I schlepped his bags. I made myself so valuable to him that he had no choice. He didn't want to lose me, so he had to hire me. And that's why I say humility over ability. I did not know an F-stop from a bus stop. I'm telling you, I was such a complete green person. But I made myself valuable. I would think ahead of time, what do I need to do to make him happy? What's going to really help out in this scenario? What would help him out right now? So he's going to think back and go, "Man, am I glad that I got her. I cannot let her go. I cannot let that woman leave my building. I got to pay her to work for me." And that's exactly what I did. I worked for him for a year without pay, and I did anything that he wanted me to do, include clean the bathrooms, because it was that important to me to learn my craft. And sometimes, especially some of the kids coming from school, and I'm not knocking formal education, there are many, many things I wish I had gone to university to learn, business especially. But the one thing that I find that seems to be where a lot of people that are the more inexperienced photographers that have schooling, they think that that's it, that's what they need to learn, that's it, that's all they need, when in reality, there are so many other more valuable things that you need to learn, like how to communicate with people, how to maneuver among people in a very soft-sided way to get them to do what you want them to do without looking like the queen, nasty person of the universe. Learning how to have the art of communication with people, and learning how to knowing when to back off and knowing when it's time to put the camera down, because there are times when it's appropriate for us to back off and we need to give them breathing room. And so I would say to those younger, inexperienced ones, suck it up, because you may know an F-stop from a bus stop and you may know all that technical stuff, but what you miss and what you don't have is you do not have experience in the real world. And you see, the real world is photographing perfectly under the set of circumstances that you are given. That's the difference. In school, we learn theory, we learn perfect lighting, absolutely perfectly way to light any object, anything at all, how to perfectly Photoshop images and how to do this or that. But what we miss, and what is really important that we need to do in spreading our education and learning more, is learning the finesse, learning when to back off, and learning when, okay, I only have this much time, I only got 5 minutes, and I don't have that 2 hours that I thought. So those are some of the other things that we have to learn that I think are really, really important. So sorry for that long-winded dissertation on that, but I tell you what, I know for myself that I absolutely wouldn't be where I'm at today if I didn't do two things. If I listened to negative people who said you can't do that. When I got started in photography, there were like 3 women photographers in the photo business. There was none of us. There were no women. It was all men. And if I listened, to the negative talk, well, you can't do that, you're a woman, or you need to raise your family, you need to do this or that, which I did. I did both of them, and I did them successfully, and I'm very grateful that I have a wonderful, wonderful child and family. But listening to people who are negative, you'll never charge that much. You'll never get that much. When I started charging, when I started realizing that I was going to have to make an actual living out of being a photographer, my first year I did exactly what everybody else did, which was called all the photographers in town and said, "Hi, I'm getting married. Could I get a copy of your price list?" I did it. I'm so telling you, I so did it. I did it just like everybody else has done. The problem with that mentality is that's what everybody does, and so we're all starving to death, not because we don't want to talk about money. Photographers are artists, and so we think that that other photographer has already done all the legwork on learning about how pricing things goes, and when in reality all they did was call up another photographer and figure that out that way. So they do the same exact thing. And so the first year I was in business, I literally could afford to hire myself, and I was so cheap that I literally almost went out of business. I was literally starving to death. And if I had listened to my old boss, who said, nobody will ever get that much money to photograph a wedding, nobody ever wants, guess who's not in business today? He's no longer a photographer. See, because it was a logical decision. He was basing it on logic. And weddings are, and any portrait is not a logic-based business. It is not logic. You cannot look at it logically. You have to look at it emotionally. And if you get your client emotionally involved with your pictures, you want that heart to override the logic process. Logic process is $3.25 is what that 8x10 cost me to have printed. Oh my Lord, if I charge $225 for that, oh my goodness. Every once in a while I'll have somebody who'll say, Bambi, I love your photography, but I can get a photograph for $1.79 at Costco, and mine are a lot more money. And I say to them, this is exactly what I say to them. I go, I could give you a photograph for like 79 cents. Would you like me to give you one? Yeah, absolutely, I would love. So I walk in my office, I get a piece of photographic paper, I bring it out there, and I hand it to them, and it is blank. And you know why? Because the paper is 79 cents or $1.29, but guess what? If you want my image on that paper, you want one of my pictures, it's going to cost X amount of dollars to get that, because you can't buy me for 79 cents. You can get that blank piece of paper, but you cannot get my talent for that. You can't do that. You can't get it, because this is our art form. It's not, you're not buying a carton of eggs in the grocery store, but it is a little bit like buying free-range chicken. Think about it. It is. It's totally like buying free-range chicken. Would you agree? Think about it. How brilliant is that marketing? Okay, you go to the grocery store and you can buy, Foster Farms chickens that are supposedly not shot with hormones and everything, right? And they plump them up with water and everything, and they're like, $1 a pound or $2 a pound or whatever. But if you want the free-range chickens, then those are the ones that get to run around the yard all over the place and do whatever they want, right? The free-range ones that still end up dead, then you have to pay like $10 a pound, right? Well, see, that's what I decided I wanted to do. And I literally I reinvented myself in 1 year. I absolutely reinvented myself in 1 year. I went from being the cheapest photographer in town that I could afford to hire myself to being the most expensive photographer in my community. What did I do? I just made the decision that I was no longer going to work for free. And so I went to my studio and I told my assistant, I said, you know what? I've decided that it's not about what you give people, it's about perceived value. Are a pair of Gucci sunglasses really worth $300 for a pair of plastic sunglasses? I went into Gucci and I bought a pair of sunglasses. Let me tell you, you should go there and buy a pair of sunglasses and say they're a gift. I can promise you, that'll be the most beautifully wrapped package you have ever seen. When you go to the Gucci store, it is gorgeous, the way that they package it. But you see, what they're doing is they're validating you buying that beautiful pair of sunglasses. They're making you feel special. And then I went, wait a minute, that pair of sunglasses is probably, $10, and you could go down on 47th and Broadway in New York City, or no, 29th and Broadway in New York City. You could buy you a pair of fake Gucci sunglasses or a fake Louis Vuitton handbag, right? And it looks just like the real thing. But would you dare give that to your wife as a gift for Christmas? No. And you better not buy her a cubic zirconia ring for a wedding present. I know. Well, you wouldn't do that anyway, Michael. But the moral of the story is that there are times in our lives when it's appropriate and it makes us feel better to spend more money. I think I mentioned this last night a little bit about how important it is. And so it's funny, my photography buddies, when I raised my rates substantially, the first time I raised for my top coverage, and I don't know if I can talk about that or not, but just a lot, like in the, let's see, 15,000 banana range, okay? I want you to know that every one of my photography buddies at the show, because they would always come up and steal my pricing, they came up to me afterwards and they're laughing at me. They're like, ooh, Bambi, you're really right. Somebody here is going to pay that much to hire you, right? Well, you know what I found out? I found out something really funny. By May, I booked it once. By July, I booked it twice. Do you know why I booked it? Because it was in there. And it's been my experience that if you want to hire if you want people to hire you that have money and that have that kind of more influence, have more dollars to spend, there's no way in the world they're going to hire you if you were too cheap. Because if they're spending more on their wedding favors than on you, they wouldn't even consider it because you're too cheap. There's something wrong with that picture. And so, I feel that if you produce a unique product, I'm not saying you have to be the very best photographer in the universe, but you'd better know an f-stop from a bus stop, and you better be really good at communicating and in creating unique images, and then charge a decent amount to make a very nice profit for your family. And let those people that want to do the shoot and burn kind of thing, let them charge $500. You don't want that client anyway. That's not the person you want, because that person is the same person that's going to ask you to make those stupid Christmas cards for them for $3.25 or some crazy amount. Anyway, I know that we probably have to wrap it up for the day, right?
Well, that was an amazing place to end.
I hope so.
Thank you so much for sharing all that. That was...
So tomorrow, I know somebody asked a question about doing groups, how quickly could I do them? And tomorrow, I'm going to promise you, I haven't forgotten about those of you that asked that question. We're absolutely going to do that. We have a lot more material to cover tomorrow, and we're going to have our really cool body painted model tomorrow. Yay! It's going to be really fun. And so, anyway, we'll see you kids back tomorrow morning at what time?
Well, 10
o'clock?
Same time, 10 o'clock.
All right.
Amazing day, Bambi.
Awesome.
Really amazing
Great.
day.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thank you.